Hello, everybody. This is Into the Fire with your host, Jason White, coming to you live from Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's episode number 82, and our guest tonight is Lieutenant James Sliger, and he's from Beaumont, Texas. He's somebody that's a friend of mine that I've met at a couple of different conferences down in the great city of San Antonio at the Homicide Investigators of Texas Conference. Those of you that are listening, if you happen to be law enforcement and you happen to be in the death industry, we hope that you consider our conference down there in San Antonio. They have it every March, and it's really going to be a good conference this year. So that's going to be law enforcement only, though. This Friday, February the 6th, is going to be my event. Good evening, Phyllis. And by the way, Phyllis, thank you. I've heard Amanda, who is behind the curtain up there in Nova Scotia, Canada, tells me that you did a super sticker. Congratulations, Phyllis, and thank you very much, because that definitely helps us. And I've never had one of those before, so thank you very much. A super sticker. She's donated to the show and to the cause, and thank you so much. I appreciate that. Maybe I didn't even know what a super sticker was until Amanda said something about it, but I like it, and thank you very much. It's very kind. So hello, everybody. Teresa's in the house. Kathleen, I love Kathleen being here. Amanda from Georgia, she's here. And just really, I got to scan up and see who all is around. I love seeing all the Travis from Muskogee down there. Travis, you're gonna have to. Is it Muskogee County or are you Muskogee PD? I can't remember. But basically, I just see a lot of the friendly, normal people in the room, and I appreciate it. Awesome. I'm excited about tonight. I didn't go to work today. I was like, screw it. I'm not going to work. It's too freaking cold. And I'm not on call now. I actually caught a case. So I'm completely free to hang out with you guys tonight. Muskogee PD. All right. I don't know why I was thinking Muskogee County, but good to have you here, Travis. I really do appreciate it. I hope you're learning something. And tonight's going to be a really interesting case with this guy. Mitch is somebody that I was impressed with. When I spoke to him down there, he started telling me about this particular case that happened in Beaumont, where it was a missing person case that happened to be profiled on Cold Justice. And it's Kimberly Langwell that came up missing back in 1999. And so July the 9th of 1999, to be specific. And when he started telling me about this case, I was like, we need to have this guy speak. We have to do this. And fortunately for us, hey, Carrie, welcome. I'm glad you're here. And I'm glad I'm your favorite detective. I really, it means a lot. But when I was talking to him, I happened to say, man, we've got to have you speak. This case has got everything that I want to hear. And it's a really interesting case. And I think that their tenacity on their department shines through. And it's really going to be a really great episode tonight. Last week, my gosh, the fingerprint guru from Massachusetts. What a great, with Brian, what a great episode that was. I've had a lot of exceptional comments from that, and from many cops throughout the country that were, they learned stuff. So that was really good, and so forth. But I won't take too much of this guy's time. I had mentioned February the 6th, which is next Friday. We had to change our date. I'd mentioned this, where I was speaking, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Tulsa Police Department Museum. We sold out 200 tickets. I kind of was glad that it got postponed, and the reason why is because it was just miserable. The weather sucked, basically, and it's too cold. And I think this Friday, if I'm not mistaken, the temperatures should be in the 50s or the 60s. And so that's quite the contrast. And so I'm really excited about meeting those that can show up. It's going to be a lot of fun. So Nevertheless, let's get to this. I'm kind of babbling right now. Let's just get on with it. James, also known as Mitch Sliger, he basically was hired by the Beaumont Police Department in 2004, where he served 5 years in patrol and street crimes unit. Me too, James. I did exactly the same thing. He promoted to sergeant and served 3 years in criminal investigations, which was the crimes against persons section, burglary, and night detective, and then 3 years in patrol. Then he was promoted to lieutenant in 2016, where he served 6 years plus as police or as patrol watch commander, and is currently the unit commander of crimes against persons. And he's been that since March of 2023. He's the commander of the Special Response Team, which is the Mobile Field Force Unit, and member of the team since 2006. He's a master police officer with the state of Texas, and he is an 11-year member of the Honor Guard, which, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that is that's a lot of work right there. Those guys do a tremendous job. And he's also a TCOL, and I've heard of that. It's basically an instructor certified in the state of Texas, and he teaches eyewitness identification and criminal investigations at the Law Enforcement Training Police Academy. And he teaches LESS, which is Law Enforcement Street Survival, which is jujitsu for law enforcement. Okay. I'll keep him in mind if I need a bodyguard this year coming up in San Antonio. And he's also appeared in the TV documentary Cold Justice. And by the way, if you want to check out this episode specifically, you need to find season 7, episode 7. And it's regarding this case, the Kimberly Langwell case, and it goes into it. I started watching it, actually, and unfortunately, they didn't have the full episode for me to watch. They just had a clip, but I'm sure that you can find it somewhere. Let's go ahead and bring James, also known as Mitch. I'm going to interchange it. I know I'm going to do it. This is his first podcast, by the way, so welcome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hopefully, I didn't butcher anything about your bio. And
that's pretty good.
When I first met him, we were at I kind of hung out with them. We were at a dueling pianos bar. I don't know if you remember this or not, but we were at this dueling pianos bar, and I think you or one of your crew bought me a drink, and we stayed there probably way too late, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Howl the Moon in San Antonio. That's the name of it.
That's right.
Howl the Moon.
That's exactly right. So tell me, how did you end up getting involved and interested in law enforcement to begin with?
Well, kind of the basic story, nothing too exciting. Born in Dallas, Texas. My father was a Baptist pastor. We moved around quite a lot as a kid. We lived in East Texas, West Texas, Northwestern New Mexico, eventually finding our way down to Beaumont, Texas in 97 when I was a sophomore in high school. Not only was my dad a pastor, he was obviously a Marine in the Marine Corps, so just very patriotic, service-oriented, instilled those values in me. I like a lot of cops that become cops, and it was either military or law enforcement for me. He pushed me to go to Lamar University, get my education, and I was always aimed at police work. And Beaumont, Texas was pretty much my hometown. It's the longest I ever lived anywhere, being traveling around as a preacher's kid. And first option, put in for Dallas, a few other places, and Beaumont hired me, and that's kind of the end of the story. It's where I stayed, where I went to high school and college at, and where I've raised my family since 97, and that's where I'm at. I'm a cop.
What now, in reference to Beaumont, what kind of a population are we talking about here, and what's the size of your police department?
Beaumont, Texas is located about 90 miles east of Houston on I-10, Interstate 10. It's in southeast Texas, not too far from the coast. So we get a lot of hurricanes, a lot of balmy weather. Population is about 115,000 residents, give or take, in each census. However, we kind of call ourselves, or it's referred to as part of the Golden Triangle down here. There are 3 major cities: Port Arthur, Texas, and Orange, Texas, which form a little triangle. It's petrochemical heavy industry down here, a lot of refineries. So we're kind of the hub of everything. So although we're 115,000 residents, we swell during the day. A lot of small towns outside of us to commute for the petrochemical business. The hospitals are here. And so the population does swell. We have about 260 sworn officers. And that's our agency down here in Beaumont.
Yeah, when I think of Beaumont, when you told me you were from Beaumont, the immediately what popped into my brain was Urban Cowboy.
Yeah, yeah.
because you guys have all those refineries and stuff like that, and I don't know if that was where that movie was supposed to be portrayed
No,
at,
no,
but
that was I think closer up to the Dallas area, if I'm correct. But I haven't watched the movie in a while. But
yeah,
yes, petrochemical oil. We have a Boomtown Museum, Spindletop Museum down here from the Spindletop boom. That kind of got the city going. So that's what I think is the major life of the community down here is petrochemical.
nice. So in your journey on the police department, did you have a specific job that was your dream job on the police department that you were really aiming to get to?
Well, no, I mean, I think like everybody else, I watch cops and I want to be a street cop, And of course, then once you get into the department, your goals change a little bit. And street crimes, that's what I wanted to do, the guys with the gangs and the drugs and driving the unmarked cars. So that presented an opportunity early in my career, like at 4 years in, and I was honored to be selected then. And but then very quickly I realized that I wanted to promote. And as I started promoting, uh, I got more and more opportunities, and that's really the first time I started thinking about criminal investigations. And once I got a taste of criminal investigations, I always wanted to make it back here. Love patrol, but I knew that I'd get an opportunity to come back. And in 22, I was able to, and 23, take over the persons unit, and I've loved it ever since.
All right. So in your persons unit, do you guys basically just handle like robberies, homicides, sex crimes, whatever comes through the door? You guys kind of that type of a detective, or are you more of a dedicated specific homicide or
No,
crime?
no, yeah,
No.
they catch them all. The investigators and the sergeants that work underneath me, everything except for sexual assault. Sexual assault is handled by special crimes. Is a different division. I'm not division, a different unit in the criminal investigations
Mhm.
division. Crimes against persons, they handle everything as minor as telephone harassment to murder, to capital murder. So anything that is against a person aside from sexual assault and not against it, and where the juvenile isn't a victim or where the juvenile didn't commit the crime, we handle it. So special crimes would handle any assaults committed by a juvenile, any assaults that occur to a juvenile. But if you're 17 and above here in Texas, you're considered an adult. You either assaulted or harassed or killed or committed those crimes or robbed someone uh, or shoot at someone, stab someone. That's going to be crimes against persons. Also, in my unit, as the unit commander, we have another separate or uh, I guess you would say specialty, which is our family violence unit. So, family violence unit is all dating violence and family violence is handled by those detectives. Anything non-family violence, not domestic violence, is crimes against persons proper. Is how we see it.
Nice. So,
Yeah.
and you've been on the department a total of how many years now?
I was hired in August of 2004. So it'll be 22 in August, so 21 years and about 5 months, I believe. That's where I'm at.
Nice. All right. Nice. Any other job that you kind of have on in your brain, if you even mind sharing? You may not want to say it, but is there a
Well,
job out there that's on the police department that you're like, man, that is what I want to do one day?
where I'm at right now is where I always wanted to be. If I could have an option of being the unit commander of crimes against persons after getting a taste of it as a sergeant, I would always hoping the opportunity would present itself. It's a prestigious position to be in, and usually lieutenants
Yeah.
that hold this position hold it for a very long time. So even though I always hoped that I would get an opportunity, I knew that it may be later in my career or when it might present itself. Uh, could be never, but that's what I always look for. Now I do hope to maybe take an opportunity to promote to captain at some point, but that's obviously a competitive test, and I have other lieutenants that want the same thing I do. So if I went
Yeah.
no further in crimes against persons, I think I've done what I want to, but I believe I have many years left. So opportunity for advancement, I would take it. And obviously, lieutenants can be moved at any time, not for anything disciplinary, just at the will of the chief. And I believe moving to whether it be another investigative unit or another enforcement unit, it would only, you know, give me more round experience. So I'm not opposed to that. But I hope they leave me here as long as I'm enjoying it. Is what I hope. So I hope I can
Yeah.
say here. Well, yeah,
Or they can move you because of disciplinary reasons into some
they can't. I
terrible
hope that's
spot.
not. I hope that's not the reason though. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
when I met him in the bar, his whole group, man, they're wearing like cowboy hats and stuff, and it was, I was like, oh, that's cool. They look like they're Texas lawmen, so it's cool.
Well,
So
that was just kind of a gig that night. The sergeant that was long standing in this unit, it was my first time at the conference. He said you have to wear a cowboy hat when we go to San Antonio, and we all resisted that. We don't wear cowboy hats down here, but he did, Sergeant Tamayo. And so I said, man, I'll be a good sport. And we did that night. So you found us that night. He said, because we went to the Alamo and took a
nice.
picture. But no, I don't wear a cowboy hat often, but I wear boots, but I don't wear a hat. So you
Well,
might
it's
have
a
just
good
sent
group
me
of
out of the
people.
element. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good group of people. We had a good time, and this will be the third year in a row that I've seen you at this conference. It'll be fun.
Yes.
I'm really excited about it, and I hopefully your presentation is all ready to roll and so forth. So let's start off with how this case ended up starting, and when did you first kind of? I mean, it happened in '99. This is before you were a
Yes.
cop. So how did this end up getting on your radar or your unit's radar at that point?
Well, 1999, just from my perspective, I'll talk a little bit about that first. I
Yeah,
was a senior in high school at Westbrook High School here in Beaumont. And it just, I remember as a kid, the immediate attention that happened in Beaumont because initially the story, as we get into it, is that Kimberly Langwell was possibly abducted from a West End of Beaumont shopping center, basically in broad daylight, in the early evening hours on a Friday night in the summer, and no one knew where she was. So, of course, I just remember my parents talking about it. It was on the news. There were talk about it at school because Kimberly's daughter Tiffany went to Westbrook. I didn't know her at the time. I think she was a year younger than me. Didn't meet Tiffany till I started this investigation or become involved in 2023. But just it was the talk of the town. It was not a robbery homicide. It wasn't a uh, drive-by shooting or something like that. It just seemed like this woman had been abducted from a pretty safe area of town where everyone goes to shop at the grocery store, goes to the Eckerd Pharmacy, and so it got a lot of attention as a teenager, is what I remember. Also, kind of big on that is billboards started going up across the city. The main one was on a street called 11th Street. I had a job at a Holiday Inn that I worked at from my sophomore year in high school all the way to my sophomore year in college. And in '99, a missing poster billboard of Kimmy Langwell went up, and I would drive by it for years. So I saw Kim's face every day. So I just knew it as a kind of infamous case that was never solved in Beaumont before I became a cop. When I got hired and I was in the FTO program in early 2005, discussed this with one of my FTOs and my field training officers. And I just said what I knew about the case, as a civilian. I mentioned, yeah, that lady, Kimberly Langwell, that was abducted. And it was the first time I heard a different story. And the cop with me, he said, oh, no, she wasn't abducted. Her boyfriend killed her. We all believe that. He's a record driver. And so that was the first I heard of it. And then I started hearing more of maybe the things that weren't released to the public, the theories that were out there. And that just kind of grew throughout the years. And so that's my initial, I think I answered that. Was there something else you asked about the case?
well,
I might
well,
have rambled.
I don't. No, you didn't ramble.
Okay.
Basically, you're just talking about how you ended up getting introduced to this case to begin with. I mean, was there something? Hey, what were some of the theories that were kind of floating around that weren't privy to the public at the time? Just kind of some of the rumors and stuff.
Yeah, so obviously the public believed it was an abduction. As you see in the missing persons flyer you keep putting up there, if you even read in the flyer, it says she was last seen at the Colonnade Shopping Center. Well, that's false. There's no evidence of that at all that she was seen at the Colonnade Shopping Center. When I promoted to sergeant in 2010, still on patrol. Of course, I was put on patrol as a brand new junior sergeant. The chief at the time had identified what he believed was a problem, that a lot of sergeants had no criminal investigative experience. And he wanted a little bit more rounded experience with his sergeants. So he wanted to do a rotational movement to where two sergeants from patrol would come to CID who had never had experience as an investigator for a year and then return to patrol. And as you can imagine, he asked for volunteers, and you're a cop, the salty sergeant patrol, no one volunteered. So the two most junior ones, we got to go. So my first stop was as a rotation in crimes against persons, working with Sergeant Jesus Tamayo, who had been in the unit for many years. And there was another investigator here named Detective Cindy Ball, who had basically adopted the Langwell case on her own. And she gave me more of the info on the case. She had picked it up around 2008 when the case had gone cold. Uh, she had a real passion for trying to find out what happened to Kim. So she started mentioning to me about Terry Rose. That she had this ex-boyfriend of hers that owned a record yard here and was last seen or was last known to be at his house. That no one had actually seen her at the Culminating Shopping Center. That was just where her car was found, which was interesting to me. And then she brought up some of the other theories. There were, well, maybe she had another boyfriend. Maybe it was her current boyfriend. And she said investigators had gone down a lot of different paths. And that was the most I really heard of it because I didn't work the case with her. This was just, coffee pot conversations or me visiting with her in her
Mhm.
office. And she retired shortly after that. And I believe once after the ball retired, Cindy retired around 2011. No one touched the case again until I came back up here in 23. So it just really piqued my interest. I just thought, man, that is a notorious case. And even though I went back to patrol or moved on to burglary, it it was just interesting to me. And I was always wondering if we could ever look at this thing again and find out what happened to Kim.
So you basically walked up there and just grabbed the case and started looking through it.
Well, shortly, sort of. So in March of 23, I got word that I was transferring to crimes against persons. I had originally moved up to CID as the property crimes lieutenant in late 22. I think it was October or November of 22. There was a unit commander here already who was nearing retirement. He had made plans he was going to retire in the next 2 to 3 years. And so I thought, well, maybe there's a possibility that if I do a good job in crimes against property, that I'll get that shot in 2 or 3 years. Well, the current unit commander in persons found a job near where he was born and raised up in East Texas, and he couldn't pass it up. So he retired earlier than anybody expected him to in March of 23, and gave me a great recommendation. The chief took a chance on me. So in late March of 23, I went to my first HIT conference, and that's where I met Kelly Siegler from Cold Justice. And when we get there, she's one of the vendors. Everyone's taking pictures with her. And I'm embarrassed to say I had no idea who Kelly Siegler was. I didn't watch the Oxygen Channel. I didn't watch Cold Justice. But the two detectives and the sergeant I was with, Sergeant Tamayo, were just, that's Kelly Siegler. And our wife watches her show. And I don't know who Kelly is. I had to get them to tell me who she was. And they told me about her background as a prosecutor. Of course, I Googled her. And there was one section of a conference for anyone that goes to a conference. It was pretty boring. So I made my way out, took a little coffee break, and it was just myself and Miss Siegler standing out there. And she approached me and introduced herself. And, I told her who I was and happy to meet her. Didn't know who she was, but I'd heard a lot of good things about her. And she just asked a simple question. She said, "Do you have any cold cases in Beaumont, Texas?" And of course, we, like every other agency, I said, well, we have plenty of cold cases in Beaumont, Texas, and haven't looked at any of them yet. I just took over this week. But the
Mhm.
one case that I always have been interested in is the disappearance of Kimberly Langwell. I just told her the basic synopsis I told you. Uh, Kelly, being from Harris County, said she remembered the case. She remembered the headlines making their way to Houston back in '99. And she remembered seeing, some of the stuff during the anniversaries of her disappearance. The family would do memorials, Crime Stoppers tips. So I went back into the class, and after class, she found me, and she had Googled the case, and she handed me her card, and she said, "I want to do this with you. I want to work this with you. See what your department says." And brought it back to my chief, Chief Jimmy Singletary. Just great guys, retired now. We have a new chief that took over in 24, into 24. But James Singletary was just very innovative. He was always, uh, let's do this. Let's try something new. He liked PR. And it took all about 5 seconds of me convincing, hey, Cold Justice wants us to do this. And he said, let's do it. And then that's how we reopened the case. And for the first time, me and these few detectives got to read every bit of the case that we didn't know anything about. We just heard of through a base rumor mill and
Yeah.
legend at the department.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, those of you that don't know the show that we're talking about, Cold Justice, I tell people this all the time. When they're brand spanking new detectives that come into the unit, I'm like, your homework assignment is to go home and watch Cold Justice. Because Cold Justice, in reference to cold cases, and this is just my philosophy, and I've been working homicides coming up on 17 years, but it's the roadmap on how to attack a cold case. I mean, it's really just it's not we're not building a rocket. It's basically going out and re-interviewing people that were involved in this case from back in the day. And people, relationships change uh, all the time, and then and sometimes people think that thing might have been already solved. They moved on with their lives, and but things change. And I'm a super fan. And to tell you the truth, James, if I've told she already knows if she showed up I told Steve Spagnola, who is on that show a lot. I've told Steve this before. I'm like, if she ends up showing up over here in San Antonio, she might need a protective order against me because I am a super fan of hers as well. So she's just,
I'm a super fan now, for sure.
oh,
I
I am,
definitely
man,
am.
for sure. So let me ask you something before, you guys, she gets with you, your chief gives you approval to do this, which is great. A lot of departments, I don't know about how many, but I know that there are those departments that are a little bit, they're not really willing to let people look at the cases. I don't know why that is. I don't know if they're worried that they're going to see that the case was terrible, that the work product wasn't very good, etc. But what was that like for you when they came to town? I mean, how does that work? Tell me the process, because I haven't even heard that from Steve, how that
Okay.
really works, as
Well,
how that
yeah.
happens.
Yeah, I'd love to do that and give a plug for them because I'm saying the same thing you are. Anyone that calls me now about a recommendation or referral for cold justice, I can't thank them enough for helping us get started. So we had the same, hindrances a little bit. Luckily, we had a chief that could overcome those because he's a chief. We'll do what he says. But I think a lot of legal advisors, it is worrisome about releasing documents to the public because you set a standard that if I release it to one person, that I release it to all, sort of thing. And I can see how that can happen. But cold justice, the way she pitched it to us and the way she pitched it to everyone at the HIT conference is, she's like, let me do what y'all don't have time to do. So we have 6 investigators in my unit in crimes against persons, a sergeant and a TFO with the FBI. And the TFO with the FBI is working a lot of federal cases most of the time. So really these 6 are the ones that catch the heavy rotation. So that's every harassment, shooting, stabbing, and then in the family violence unit, every thing that happens with domestic violence or family violence related to the same thing. And we don't have a dedicated cold case squad. We don't have just most departments don't. You don't have the resources. You can't do it. Cold Justice pitched that let us do that for you. If you give us a case, we're going to return to you with a product of an organized case, which Jason, you probably know better than me. That's the biggest part to get started because you're checking out a box that's 24 years ago in records. That's most of it's typewriter written statements. Where's the evidence at? It's all thrown into a jumbled order, and you're trying to make heads or tails of anything. Once they get these documents, the Oxygen Channel and her team, that is their job. They are getting a TV show out of it. She's not lying about that. I will get a TV show out of it, but you will
Mhm.
get a great benefit. When they showed up in November of 23 to start the case, we had a very violent summer here, so we hadn't even really looked much more at it but a cursory glance. They showed up with a witness grid. They showed up with a synopsis. Everything was organized. And for the first time, we got to sit down with Kelly before the show started filming and digest his case in a more understandable way that had been, you know, through legend or just word of mouth. Some of those things weren't true. But now we could see the facts what they were, what the investigators actually did in 99, what they found in 99, and what they dispelled in 99. And they had a written out schedule for us. Day one, we're going to interview these people, and we know where they are. We found where they are. We know exactly where they are. They've used their resources through databases or whatever,
Yeah.
that we're going to go to them and we're going, and what we need to ask them, we all, not just them, we agreed with, they consult the investigators. These questions need to be asked. These things need to be asked. These people need to be investigated, and we need to hone in on what we think happened here. And that right there takes such the heavy lifting off an department that's busy. And whether you have 1 or 2 people in CID or you have 100 people in CID, you're still busy with your caseload. And unless you have a dedicated cold case unit, which I know most police departments in the United States don't, uh, cold justice will do that for you. Plus, they will also, if you need to travel, they pay for the travel. We use their vehicles. So it was like having an army of people assisting you on this case for a dedicated week or two. and they prepared all of it before they show up to you. So we still got to investigate as a department, but it's such a head start, and I can't say nothing but great things about the Cold Justice show and Kelly Siegler and those
Yeah,
detectives that came and helped us.
I'll add one thing to that as well. They pay for all the lab testing too.
Oh yes,
All
yeah,
of
for
that,
sure.
and that is an extraordinary expense. You could be spending over $10,000 on a DNA test if you could. So they take care of all of that, which is great. So that's good. For those that are listening, and believe me, I take Steve Spagnola gave me a stack of cards like this, and he's like, "Hey man, pass these out everywhere you go," because he knows I teach, and so I've been handing those out in different states and so forth. So that's good that I was interested in how that works. So how long really did they have the case before they reached out to you and they were ready to start production of this?
So I said we met in March of at the HIT conference. I'm sorry, I got to plug in this. I'm about to.
Yeah, this is interesting stuff, ladies and gentlemen. We're getting a little inside look about Cold Justice, and that's kind of cool as to how the production works. And I'm sure it's, for the most part, it's the real deal. I mean, they're not doing a bunch of. It's just.
Okay, I'm sorry about it.
No, you're
Yeah,
good.
so
I'm glad you caught that.
So March of 23 is when we made the initial agreement, and we were filming by November, the week before Thanksgiving of 23. So that is 8 months, I believe, 8 months at the most that we were ready to go. We communicated with them through the summer. They were missing something, or they needed, hey, we need another document. You see here, I'd go find the archives. Or I sent Detective Heather Wilson, who was a primary in the case, to find it, and we communicated with them. We had a liaison that was in touch with us. The production team came and met with us a few months early to scout out where they're going to film, what they need. But they send down the supplies, they send down their own furniture, their own whiteboards, they ship it all to the department, and we just give them a space to work in, and they tell us what's good for our schedule, and they'll show up, and that's how it starts.
So I want to give props to the detectives that were with you. Who were some of the others that were with you as far as this select group of people that have been, that are on this case now?
Well, as you watch the show, I would say I'm a guest star, and I should be, because the real detectives that did the heavy lifting there were Detective Heather Wilson. She's our primary investigator here. She was the most experienced detective in the unit when I took over. She's a few years behind me in seniority, but was more experienced than me in the unit. And then Sergeant Jesus Tamayo. Sergeant Tamayo had been in crimes against persons at that point, I believe, 21 years, and was kind of a local legend around here. Tamayo he started as a grade 1 investigator. He promoted to sergeant. They moved him to our crime scene unit. And then shortly after that, he came back to crimes against persons. And I consider him a mentor. I got to work with him when I was first up here in 2010. He took me under his wing and showed me everything he knew. And it was a very short time I was here before I left back to patrol. So my first decision was who is going to be the two that work this case, because Cold Justice likes to pick two detectives, to pair up, one with Kelly, one with the investigator they bring in for assistance. And those were my first two picks. I knew Jesus Tamayo had the experience. I knew that Detective Heather Wilson had a great closure rate. She had a great work ethic. And I also knew she had a drive. She likes doing things like this. So I just picked my most senior, and of course the sergeant I leaned on, and they did a lot of the heavy lifting. I had my little guest spots, and I kept in contact with them, and I was very passionate about the case. And I can't do anything but thank those guys so much too, because I put them through it, and they did everything I asked. Like, hey, let's just keep going, let's keep trying, and there was no pushback. They were right there with me. They had just as much desire. They fell in love with the case, and and they had to testify and do most of the things that I could just sit back and watch. So two really hard workers. And then of course a shout out to the rest of the guys, because while they were busy with this, they picked up their slack, and there weren't any complaints. They knew this was an important case. Once we started making headway after Cold Justice, which we'll get to, they had to pick up the slack, but they also wanted justice for Kim. So they might not get a lot of camera time or names out there, but it really was a very good team effort, and I just appreciate all of them on that.
Yeah, teamwork makes the dream work. So as far as this thing is going on, and they come back and they've got a kind of a roadmap of what you guys need to do. how did it start playing out from that point? And were you starting to see progress right away?
Oh, well, immediately that was the best thing was before we started, we wrote down what are the possibilities here? What could have happened to Kimberly Langwell? And there's a lot of things. She was a missing person. Remember, we never found her body at this point in 2023. And so we have to look at all the options. Is she a missing person? Is this a homicide? Of course, we very quickly could assume it's a homicide because they were able to show through the investigation 99 records till now that on that date in July 9th, 1999, till the time that we were starting this investigation in November, all signs of life of Kimberly had ceased to exist. There was no digital footprint. She never used a credit card. She never used a cell phone. No sightings of her. So it was very quick to say we're working on homicide, which we already assumed, but we needed to be thorough. And then we started knocking off the alternative things that could happen to Kim. Did she commit suicide? Well, no. Bodies never found. Her lifestyle didn't indicate anything of being suicidal. We started looking at other people in her past and knocking off real quick that even though she had other people that I guess technically could have done this, who's the most likely that could have done it? So before we started the investigation, we already believed, well, the most likely person did this is Terry Rose. And then we just need to confirm that, not have a confirmation bias. We still had to investigate very thoroughly because you don't just want to hone in on one person wrong. So we started with the witnesses that knew her closest, the witnesses that saw her that day, the people in her life that she talked to, her family, and all these other possible suspects that had come up through Crime Stoppers tips or just strange occurrences in the past. And once we started slowly, methodically talking to everyone again personally, not just through reading a statement from 99, but hearing from them right now in real time in 23, their stories hadn't changed. Everyone that was involved in Kimberly Langwell disappearance, whether it be her friends or family, very much their memory remembers that day. They remember that time, and it coincided with what they said in their statements. But now we were getting more information, which aren't on typed statements. There's only so much you can type. The investigator that day is going to put what he believes is pertinent, and that's just how human beings work.
Mhm.
This is important to my case, but you don't get everything that might have been said in that interview. They weren't audio and video recorded back then in Beaumont PD. We didn't have tapes. So now we're hearing, well, we didn't know this extra detail, or, well, I told the police that in 1999. Well, I'm sure they did. It just wasn't documented. But now we're able to hear even more specifically of
Yeah.
of what's happening. So re-interviewing these people that remember this case very specifically because it was a traumatic time in their lives helped us kind of narrow the gap that we were on the right track. And this was the guy. It was Terry Rose.
Yeah. So you started basically talking to some of these people. Did you come across? I mean, this is usually these cases. To tell you the truth, when it ends up happening, in a lot of these cases, is somebody ends up getting into trouble, and then they
Yes.
they they they've got motivation to kind of start talking to the cops, which is causes the dust to get dusted off that case and then taken
Yeah.
off of the shelf, really, or a family member that keeps calling. But
Yes.
so you're at this point now where you starting to find witnesses that were really well. First of all, were they willing to testify if need be, and were they wanting to cooperate, or did you find that really good witness out of the group of people that you were like, okay, this guy knows something, or he knows more than what he's telling us?
Well, before we started the investigation, after the file was organized, it became very clear that there was one person or that knew what had happened here was a quasi alibi of Terry Rose. It might be a little bit ahead of myself, but we knew that the linchpin there was a friend of his that he claims he meets with later in the evening after Kim was last at his house. So our theory then, which eventually proves to be true, is if anyone knows what happens to Kim, because Terry seems to not told anyone, and if he did tell somebody, it would have to be this guy. It'd have to be a friend of his because this is fresh on his mind. Maybe he needs some
Mhm.
help. We don't know what rate of help he needed. We didn't know where the body was or what. We didn't know what happened. Would be him. Everyone else that we showed up and talked to, of course, they recognized Kelly as soon as they got out of the car. Like I said, I didn't know she was such a celebrity. I feel bad about that. But as soon as she stepped out of the vehicle with our detectives, they would just say, "Is this about Kim?" because another thing that cold justice is, it's not scripted. We don't tell them we're coming ahead of time. It's
Right.
pure investigation. You show up, and they were just, finally, it's about Kim. Someone's looking into Kim, and there was no one that didn't want to talk about it. Everyone wanted to talk about it. Everyone was willing to testify, anything they could testify about. The biggest hurdle was maybe getting some trust from Kimberly's daughter, Tiffany. You know, uh, I don't want to speak too much for her, but we became very close to the family when we met them, uh, Tiffany and Kimberly's sister Susan, is that Tiffany had all but given up on the police. She had given up on the police. She had a very sour taste in her mind as a 15-year-old girl. She always knew who did it, she said, and she thought no one was listening to her. And so when I called her and told her what we were doing, introduced myself to her, it took a little bit of trust to come from her, but not too long. Her aunt, Susan, Tiffany's sister, was the complete opposite. Susan was excited from the start. She wanted to work with the police. She didn't
Hmm.
hold any grudges, I could tell. And she just told Tiffany, we have to do this. We at least need to get your mom's story out there. And
Hmm.
that was their lowest bar of expectation on this. It wasn't, I don't think they ever believed the case would be solved. And even us, I have to admit it, our expectations were very low. No one solved this case. They're all they wanted was, we want our mom to be remembered. People forgotten about Kimberly. We just want someone to care and look and tell her story again. And so once Tiffany bought into that, that was another good thing about having cold justice is, their people aren't police. It's a new group of people that can go talk to them, and it kind of helps if there is any kind of uh, sourness in their mind about how the investigation happened years ago.
Yeah, I don't mean to jump around here, but the one question that just came to my mind that I don't want to pass over. What was their how long had the suspect in this case and the missing girl, how long had they had a relationship for? And how did he call the police and say, "Hey, I don't know where she's at. She's missing." Or was it one of those deals where the family is the one that ended up calling? And it's kind of a compound question. And what was did he like never call the cops? You know what I
Well, yeah,
mean? It's like, hey, they had a
yes.
relationship, but yet this guy never even asked again about, hey, what are you guys doing? Nothing.
So it's a lot to kind of digest. But really, Terry and Kim had a relationship prior to July of 1999. They'd had, and I may be speaking incorrectly here, but at least about a year-long relationship that had pretty much ended in the early months of 1999. They had lived together at Terry's house with Tiffany, and Terry's children would also visit from a previous marriage. Well, the relationship soured. There were arguments between the two of them. Tiffany and Kim eventually move out, get their own residence, and in early summer, uh, Kim starts dating a new person at work. She worked at ExxonMobil down here, as I mentioned before, petrochemical. Met a coworker of hers there, and that relationship seemed to really be taking off. Kind of started as, just a normal early relationship, but between all the witnesses and the new boyfriend we talked to, things were starting to progress to the point that Kim was like, this is going to be serious. I'm going to move on with the new guy. However, she always had contact with Terry, probably not by her choice. Terry exhibited a lot of controlling behavior, never let her out of his sight. He would still call her every morning. He would come by her house late at night to see who she was out with, what time she got home. And from family and even the daughter that tell us, you know, Kim never just would pacify him. She's like, I'll just keep talking to him. I'll calm him down.
Mhm.
It's kind of going to a slow stop, coasting to a slow stop rather than breaking off completely, and that may have ultimately been what led to this tragic situation. Is she might not have seen this coming, but Terry was escalating in his jealousy, and he was losing Kim. He could tell there was a new relationship, there was a new guy. Even though they were physically separated, the relationship had ended. Maybe he always thought, I'll get her back, I still have my control over her. But it seemed that she was very seriously moving on in a new direction with a new boyfriend, and was going to break the ties with him. So
Yeah.
yeah. So on July 9th, 1999, she had plans with her new boyfriend, a man named Ken Weatherford, to have dinner with him that night. They were going to meet at her house at 6:30 and go out to dinner with Ken and Tiffany, her daughter. When she gets off work about 5:10, she clocks out. She calls her daughter on cell phone at 5:13, tells her, "Hey, we're going to dinner. Ken will be at the house at 6:30. I have to run by Terry's first for something, and then I'll be right back." Well, come 6:30, Ken's over. Mom's not back. Tiffany does not tell the new boyfriend he's at the ex-boyfriend's house, but she knows. Tiffany knows where mother's at. About 7 o'clock, after they've been calling Kim's cell phone, both Ken and Tiffany, the cell phone's not, it's dead, it's turned off, which they said is 100% not like her. She lives on that phone, she always answers. They start to page her. And it was very clear to Tiffany that her mother never did not return a page to her. They were very close. It was just her and her mom. There were no other siblings. You know, they were together. They were very close. They were each other's world, is how she describes it. Mom never did not page me back. She even sent the 911 page. It was just a code for them to call me back. No
Mhm.
call. So it's about 7 o'clock. She calls Terry Rose at his house. Whereas my mom, I know she was coming over there. Terry's statement is she left about 5:30 and haven't seen her. And so he even self-admittedly admits the last person to have seen her alive is him. You know, so very quickly there's a concern there. Um, Obviously, Kim never comes home. Ken stays with Tiffany. He eventually has a friend of hers come over to stay the night with her, and he begins to look for Kimberly. He did not know that she had gone to Terry's, and I think obviously we can understand how a teenage girl wouldn't want to put that out there to the new boyfriend. So he goes on his own looking for her car or looking for her. Well, the first place he goes is kind of an area of town where we have some bars, some nightclubs, and he finds Kim's car parked in front of the Eckerd Shopping Center, kind of close to where these bars and places are across the street. He knows it's her car. It's distinctive wheels. He pulls in and looks at it. He finds it about 11 o'clock that night, and he heads
Mhm.
home to his house in Vidor, Texas, which is just about 15 miles outside of Beaumont. As you can see, this becomes suspicious behavior on Ken. You can see how things are being mixed up. But when you talk to Ken, with his explanation, it makes a lot of sense. He's not at anyone at this point thinking that Kim has been killed. He doesn't even know that Kim's been over at Terry's house.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing in his mind is, what's she doing? You know, I thought things were good. Why would this is just totally out of her? Like he's kind of hurt and befuddled. Like, is she out without me? You know,
Mhm.
did she just turn her phone off on me? So he goes home. He waits till about 3 a.m. that morning, which is understandable. Bars close at 2 here in Texas. So he's like, if anything, that car will be gone. She'll be back home, or that car will be moved at 3 because she will have done whatever she needs to do, and the car won't be there. He drives back into Beaumont at 3 a.m. The car's still there. People have a question, well, why didn't he call the police then? But you put yourself in his mind frame, as he's explained, what would a man think if a car's still there at 3 a.m.? Not that my girlfriend's been killed, but really, is this really happening? You know?
Yeah. She went
But
home with somebody else.
exactly, but
Yeah.
he's still just not making sense to him because they were doing so well. So he says he goes home, he can't sleep. So about I believe at 6:30 or 7, he goes and calls Tiffany and he says, "Did your mom come home?" No, she didn't. He said, "We need to call the police," and tells her what he found. So that's what she reported missing. Uh, Kind of a disconnect there between patrol response to take a missing person report, but no one goes to the car. No police officers go to the car. The family goes to the car. The family finds the car in a shopping center. It's locked, no keys in it. There's a cell phone in there and a purse.
Mhm.
They've already called the police. No one's come out. So they call the only person I could think of that is always willing to help, who always is worried about Kim, the self admittedly goes by her house every night to make sure she gets home safe. uh, they call Terry Rose. So Terry Rose comes and, being a record driver, unlocks the car for him, but doesn't say anything. They say, "Hey, Kim's missing." He doesn't act concerned at all. He's like, "Okay, well, now you know how I feel." Gets in his car and leaves. And so very quickly, Susan is suspicious, the sister, and he's not concerned that this would be his time to shine. That's kind of how Detective Wilson and I have talked. You know, a guy that's
Yeah.
always caring about her. If he was really concerned about her, you think he'd be activated. He'd be in
Mhm.
super sleuth mode. You know,
Yeah.
calling the police. She was at my house. She left here. I don't know where she went. He just doesn't care. So the car sits there for several more hours until later that night when it be like 8 or 9 p.m. The family comes back to the car. They find a Beaumont March unit. They flag him down, and they're expressing their concerns about, hey, my sister and my mom haven't come back. This officer doesn't know what they're talking about. He doesn't know that
Yeah.
there's a missing person, but he knows enough that this is above my pay grade. And let me call out detectives. So detectives don't really get involved till in the late night hours of July 10th. They eventually go to Terry Rose's house in the early morning hours of July 11th because they realized that was the last place she was actually seen, because she told Tiffany. If she had never told Tiffany that she was going by there, we wouldn't know this information. They do search his house, obviously to find no signs of Kim. And we have to remember at this point, they're looking for a missing person. You
Mhm.
know, they get a consensual search, and he has the same story. Showed up at 5:30. And so that's kind of where the investigation starts up. But no, he never called the police himself. He acts unconcerned. He kind of gives them excuses as, well, she's probably running around with other men. She probably went to Houston. This is how she
Mhm.
is. When they start pressing him further with that.
But Travis from Muskogee, he'd asked, was he a suspect early on? And it sounds to me like he was. He was pretty
Yes,
much
yes,
on,
very much.
you know.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. So from there, you guys are jumping all over this case. You're running on it. And then what is kind of some of the information that you're starting to hear from the witnesses that's really moving the ball forward?
So in 23, just to jump, kind of move the story forward as we're interviewing the witnesses, it becomes clear that not only did she tell Tiffany, she told several friends that day at lunch that, hey, I have to go by the loser's house. She had lunch with a bunch of girlfriends at work that day. Uh, I need to go by there. Uh, Terry had used some type of ruse to get her back. There's different stories. She told friends that he said there was jewelry she needed to pick up. She needed to come get this jewelry. And so she doesn't really understand that there's an issue here. She's going to go pick up the jewelry and then probably head back and have her dinner with Ken. Probably not mention Ken. Probably not mention anything about that unless it comes up. And then we start hearing from closer friends and family that there was a history of worse stalker behavior than we really knew of, or that wasn't recorded as in detail in a written statement. She had confided in girlfriends of hers that he had strangled her at one point just a few weeks beforehand, when they had a situation like this, or weeks or maybe a month or two beforehand, and she stayed away
Yeah.
from him since. They had an argument at his house. She thought she was going to die. So her friends that day are begging her, don't go to Terry's house. She's like, no, he hasn't done anything in a while. He's fine. I'll go by there real quick. So they've all for 24 years now have suspected that's who else could it be, but
Hmm.
Terry Rose. And but I just think the officers back then, they get on it 2 hours late, and then when you find out where we found her and how intricately hidden she was, you know, I'm telling you right now, Jason, if I went to a missing persons call and I walk into, I don't know how the house looked back then. It's kind of, we don't have that detail, but if I walk into a house and the flooring is intact and there's furniture or something, I'm not going to be moving beds and rugs to look for a missing
Yeah.
person. I'm looking for
Yeah.
her purse. I'm looking for blood. I'm looking for signs
Right.
of a struggle. I'm looking for anything obvious that will lead me to be that she is here or something happened here. And I'm
Right.
just hypothesizing that that's what those investigators back then were looking for. But he's had now at this point from 5 p.m. Friday night to about 1 or 3 a.m. Sunday morning to make this, which we believe he did in that time period, hidden underneath the floor in his house in the concrete slab. So he's had some time, and he owns a record yard. He's a record driver. He had access to tools. It's a quiet, secluded place. So there's always noise come from that area. Terry's never talked to us about this. That he won't tell us what happened during those hours. But so we're left with a lot of questions. But I believe there just weren't any signs she was there. And so they started looking elsewhere, and where could she have gone? Where could she be
Yeah.
hidden? Is there anyone else that could have done this? But of course, he was always on the radar as this is our prime suspect, but they're also doing their due
Sure.
diligence of, but what else could have happened like we did too? We don't want to focus on one guy and put all of our eggs in this basket because we've looked and we have nothing. We have nothing but she was there at some point that night.
So you guys are running around in black Suburbans because that's what Cold
Yes.
Justice does. The
Oh,
word
yeah.
on the streets is that Cold Justice is in town. that they're looking into this case. There's no doubt in my mind that there was phone calls made, and he hears
Oh,
about
yeah.
it at some point in time. So what was his demeanor like when you guys ran into him?
So Terry Rose has never, what we'd say, lawyered up throughout the entire investigation. 99, he's always come in and spoken to police officers. Whether it was in 99, he came in a few days later after the 11th and gave a formal statement. He was re-interviewed again in 2001. And then, of course, when we went to talk to him in 23, though, it was the first suspicious behavior we saw. And it's on the show if you watch it. When the detectives are trying to knock on his door, our surveillance units noticed that he is leaving out a back gate, trying to drive off in a pickup and get out of Dodge, basically, like you said, because I think he knows they're investigating the case. However, as you'll see
Hang on
on
a
the
minute.
show if you watch it,
Hang on a minute,
it was,
James. Amanda, don't ever put that message up on this screen again. She's like, everybody needs a lawyer. No, we don't like
no,
that.
no, no, no. If you're no, man, we're the good guys here. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's nothing to hide here. We're not going to do you wrong if you didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
All right. Proceed on.
So they were able to hem him up. Detective Wilson was, and he willingly starts to talk, and he plays a cool customer. You know, they start talking about Kim, and it's just hard to remember your lies you told in 9901. The basic story is the same, but he has changed. He's changed what he's told investigators. His original statements to investigators was that Kim came by to help him hang some boards in his house. So, and if you talk to Tiffany, she said that's the most absurd thing in the world. My mom doesn't hang anything. She pays people to do that, or she gets people to do that. She's a girly girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Kim had told her friends, Terry told me to come get jewelry. Well, he actually states that to us in 23. Yeah, she was coming by to get some jewelry, you know, and but he plays the whole thing. I've never hit a woman. I would never hit a woman. Anyone that ever hits a woman's a pussy. You know, they press him real hard. But then they ask him, like, well, where do you think she is? Which I thought was a great question from Detective Wilson, because I don't know about you, but if my wife and girlfriend had gone missing, I would have a very in-depth theory, and I'm innocent, of where I think she is. If you ask me that question, I would be ready to talk. I think she was killed. I think this guy did it. I think that guy did it. His statements from 99 up until 23 have always been like, I don't know. I think she just got tired of being a mom and wanted to go live her life. And just matter of fact, he doesn't care, you know. She wasn't that big of a deal to me, which we know was a lie based on all the statements from everyone else about how controlling he was, and his self-admitted statements in 01, where he basically admits to stalker behavior, but he doesn't see it as stalker behavior. He's just checking on her. He's just making sure she's okay every day and every night, you know. So that right there, obviously, this guy's not going to confess. You know what I mean? So that's kind of left it. But he tried the Dodgers, but once you front him up, he plays the cool customer, and why not? He's gotten away with it for 24 years. He must think they're not going to find her.
So what made you? What gave you enough to get back into that? Did he give you permission to go back into that house, or did you guys end up doing a search warrant, or how'd that end up
but we ended up getting a
transpiring?
search warrant. So after the show filmed, we did not obviously do not find Kimberly Langwell. We believe we had a very strong circumstantial case that, you know, means an opportunity. There's only one person that could do it. You know, her timeline was just down to the fact that the last place she was alive was Terry Rose's house. That's the last proof of life. So where else could she have been killed at? Was right there. However, you can see that, you know, district attorney's offices are want a little bit more, and you can't blame them for that. So we asked for a grand jury. They said, well, we did a TV show. How about we bring them into the grand jury? All these witnesses, along with Terry Rose and his friend David Wiley, who he met with at 9:30 that night after her disappearance. We pressed everybody in the grand jury, and of course, the grand jury sees it like we see it. They do, but you know, where's that smoking gun at? Where is it? David Wiley's interviewed the grand jury, and he doubles down on, no, he never talked about Kim. I don't know anything about Kim, and we kind of fizzle out. We're a little bit disappointed. Terry Rose, you know, refuses to the same story. Everything doesn't know what happened to her, so we move on. But I remember the three of us walking out, me and Sergeant Tamayo and Detective Wilson of the grand jury, and you know, this is what I say about tenacity. All three of us were like, I don't think we're done. You know, we believe then that Terry Rose is never going to confess to this. He's never going to. But that guy that he was with was sure nervous. You know what I mean? So why don't we put all of our attention on him? Because only one person can truly keep a secret. Two
Yeah.
people can't. You know what I mean? And
Brilliant.
was pushing
Brilliant.
on him. And it didn't take much. We called him back into the grand jury, and he said, I need to call an attorney. That was just a strange reaction, right?
Yeah.
And very quickly, an attorney reaches out to us and says, "Hey, I got a guy that wants to talk to you. Obviously, you want some assurances."
Hmm.
And Wiley provides a break in the case. He gives us that not only does he know what happened to Kim, but he was instrumental in the biggest mystery part of this. So, as we mentioned, her car is found at the Eckerd parking lot at the Colonnade Shopping Center, which is miles from Terry Rose's house. So we're all wondering how that could have happened. The biggest theory we've had is that he moved it with the wrecker, right? He had to move the wrecker. He's a record driver. However, this is a busy shopping center. It's daylight hours still. Surely someone would have seen a wrecker
Yeah.
dropping it off. So it was the biggest situation here. Well, as Wiley's testified now in open court and other news stories, he admits that he gets off work. He knows Terry. He used to work for him. He doesn't work for him currently in 1999 in July, but they're still friends. And Terry says, "Hey, I need your help. Meet me at Walmart parking lot." He pulls up a Walmart parking lot and he sees Kim's car, which is not where the car is eventually found. And Terry gets out of it. So he doesn't see Kim. And he knows something's up. Terry tells him, "I don't like this spot. Follow me." Follows him a few miles down the road to the Eckerd Shopping Center, where eventually, uh, hold on a second, where eventually he parks the car where it's found, gets in the car with him. And then there's, just to summarize, at some point, David starts asking questions, "Man, what's going on, man?" And he's like, "I
Yeah.
killed her. I shot her in the back of the head. Killed her. I got her car out of the way." They dropped the car off. He drops him back off at the house. They have plans to meet up again at a pool hall, which happens to be in the same shopping center her car is found. I believe Terry did that on purpose. I think Terry wanted to keep eyes, in my theory, to keep eyes on it in case the cops do show up to it. He'll know if it's found that night,
Hmm.
if somebody pops it. And so we pushed Wiley a little bit further into, "Man, did you have anything to do with this? Did you help him, hide him?" Well, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. He says, "I also know where she is. She will still be there." Is all he gave us. And he says she's going to be under the floor in the house. That just seemed crazy to us. This is a slab house. It's not pier and beam. And how would anybody know that unless he helped or saw it happen?
Hmm.
David denies to this day ever helping, providing assistance, but says that Terry told him that's where he's going to put her, or that's where he's putting her. Is under the
Well,
floor, under the concrete.
let me ask you this right quick. Oh, under the concrete. So
Yes.
so we're not talking about a crawl space. We're talking about
No.
literally under a concrete slab, which is not an easy thing to do. And
So as you can
so
imagine, we're not really believing this either, right? Uh, we're saying, what do you mean under the concrete? Because we're thinking a crawl space. Maybe he
yeah.
temporarily stored her there, and he's moved her since. Because he owns acres and acres of real estate there with junk cars, short storage sheds. Well,
Hmm.
maybe he put her there originally, but he could have moved her since. And we're really pushing hard on David to be like, "Man, give us. Did you help it? Did you?" That would help us a lot. Like, "No, I know she's there because I broke the concrete." He denies that. Denies he never saw her body. He never went in, but he's trying to tell us it's where she's going to be. She's going to be underneath there. So now we have to go to bring him back in front of the grand jury, and of course the DA's like, "We're giving you a warrant. The judge is giving you a warrant," and we're like, "We're going to have to break this concrete." So you can imagine how that went, convincing our
Hmm.
chiefs and our district attorney's office. Because when you break concrete, you're destroying a house.
Yeah.
It's done. So,
Yeah.
uh,
It's an
but
expensive
that
venture for sure.
yeah, but that's as far as we could push it. But it was great. But the information of him knowing about the car made it. He had to be credible enough. Do you see what I'm saying? That
Yeah.
he's admitting to involvement in the crime. And his statement was basically, "Once I knew I helped move that car, I've watched a bunch of cop movies. I knew I was just as guilty as murder. Whether he was or not, he believed it." And
Hmm.
he was only interviewed one time in 1999. He was interviewed in July 11th, that same day they searched the house. And he was never talked to again until we talked to him again in 23 and 24. So I think, you know, obviously I have my feelings on the matter, but you can understand that it's easy to keep a secret if no one's asking you and you think you're going to be in trouble for a long time. So it's not that he continually lied for 24 years. He just kept a really good secret after he was asked one time. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
once the pressure turned up on him a little bit, he came back and he said, I need to do the right thing. I need to do what I need to do, and I know you are going to do this. And I've held on to this for years. That's what she's going to be. So we executed the search warrant in June 10th of that year. The grand jury was on April 3rd. Uh, June 10th, we issued the warrant. It was a huge undertaking. I wasn't part of most of that. Of course, we have other cases going on here. Once again, I turned that over to the two
Mhm.
great people that work for me, Detective Heather
Yeah.
Wilson and Sergeant Tamayo. And we utilize BPD SWAT to clear the residents. We utilize our traffic units, shut down the street. But we had a warrant not just for the house, but for the entire property, because we were still concerned without getting real good information that it was really underneath the concrete, that maybe it was just something Terry told him, but she's been
Mhm.
moved since. Could she be somewhere else? Could she be buried in a hole out in the yard somewhere underneath a wrecked car?
Right.
So we were able to get great assistance from the FBI. The evidence response team came in, and for 3 days they searched the entire property. And eventually they honed back in on the house using GPR, and we actually reached out to Texas EquiSearch. We were pretty good relationship with Tim Miller down here, and he came in and assisted with his GPR too. And in a guest bedroom, which happens to be his kid's bedroom, they find a void in the floor. There's flooring, tile flooring, but there's no rebar. So they smashed it, and underneath the tile was just cinder blocks. Uh, and so once they started digging, that's where we found the gravesite for Kimberly Langwell.
Gosh, that had to have been an unbelievable feeling, honestly.
Unbelievable, yeah, unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
When I got the phone call, sitting in my office, because I'm paying attention, from Detective Wilson, and she's like, "You ain't gonna believe this. We think we found it." I'm like, "Okay, well, something's gonna be there." And then they start digging and digging, and then the first thing they find are some human remains very early, just small pieces of bones. We knew we had it, and went to our district attorney's office, and we said, now's the time. We need an arrest warrant. And then within a few minutes, the PC was written up, judge was called, arrest warrant was issued. Terry Rose had been removed from the house, obviously, and been for days. We had taken his residence from him.
Yeah.
He was not allowed back in. And
Yeah.
he was under surveillance. We knew where he was. The warrant was signed. Our special assignment unit, which is like our street crimes unit, surveillance unit, took him down at a local restaurant, put in custody real quick. And then the excavation kept on for another 6, 7, 8 hours, going through
Mhm.
muck and digging and digging. And eventually she was found. The rest of her remains skeletal in that bedroom.
Really? Pretty much
Yes.
entirely skeletal remains. Was there any,
Entirely
was it, well, I mean,
skeletal.
it's, yeah, I'm sure there was like a lot of adipocere and stuff like that, that white stuff in the soil. Maybe not. I don't know.
Not
I mean, it's
really,
different. Really?
it was strange. And I gotta give this to this response team, forensics. They do all the hard lifting, and of course our Beaumont crime scene unit was right there with them. So we had every personnel. These guys have worked in the Texas heat, searching that property for 4 days. It's going on 2 or 3 and 4 in the morning, and they've been digging.
Yeah.
It's just muck, and they're sifting, and you can tell that they're getting to it. But those very early bones we found that allowed us to arrest him early in the night. We didn't
Mhm.
get to the rest of the remains till later. So, but once we got to the rest of the remains, we didn't find any clothing. She was wrapped in some type of a blanket or something, which
Mhm.
was nice for us because it kind of kept her all together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
unwrapped it, and you could tell everyone was just very passionate about finding Kim, whether it be FBI response team, those crime scene unit techs that I also supervise are also part of my unit. The crime scene unit, saying the crimes against persons, and then of course Detective Wilson and Sergeant Tamayo,
Yeah.
digging through the muck and sifting. And I get to go out to the very end, as I'm just kept up. We had other homicides that week, and it was just
What
an unbelievable relief.
what about evidence of a gunshot wound to the head? Was that
Oh yeah,
evident in the skeleton?
oh yeah, for sure. Autopsy revealed a bullet to the back of the head. In fact, we found the projectile inside her skull still during the autopsy at UNT. So lower base of the head, in almost he kind of say it like she never saw it coming type deal. We don't know
Yeah.
how that happened. So, with Terry not telling us exactly what happened, not being truthful to this day, only he knows what happened in that house. But this was
Yeah.
definitely not self-inflicted. This was definitely not a struggle over firearm. This was anything like that. I mean, if you're shot in
Yeah.
the back of the head base of the skull, there's
Yeah.
only one way that's gonna happen.
It's an execution. So
Yes,
so basically, what was his demeanor like when you guys put him in custody? You said he's never really lawyered up on anybody. Did
he
he
did then.
oh,
He
he
did
did
then.
then?
Yeah.
Okay.
He had
Okay.
a very defeated look. He had a very defeated look, and
Hmm.
basically all he told Detective Wilson and Sergeant Tamayo was, I watched it from the interview room, was, guess y'all found what y'all were looking for. And that was it. You
Okay.
know? And
Yeah.
yeah. And
What
that
happened in
was
the court case? Was it pretty much cut and dry? Pretty smooth sailing, or was there any kind of I mean, I when you got a body buried underneath your slab,
yeah,
that's a
it's hard to
problem.
beat that. It's hard to beat
Yeah.
that, but we were wondering what his goal was here. And so, with talk with the family, the district attorney's office, like, we can take this to trial and it's a slam dunk. We'll embarrass him, but you always have
Yeah.
that thing you gotta consider, that one juror. But if we can get him to take a hefty plea at his age, I believe he's 68 years old now.
Hmm.
That's what we'd like to do. Of course, the
Hmm.
family, I don't think, wanted to relive this whole thing to the court, and we expected a plea pretty quick. However, he hired his own attorney, but then he wasn't able to afford his attorney. He wasn't paying the bills, so then that delayed it. He got appointed a public defender, which now
Yeah.
he needed his own time to do his own investigation. He needed to prepare his own
Sure.
defense, and then eventually on December 16th of last year, he pled to 40 years. He did want to introduce some type of evidence, which I believe everyone can find online in Judge Raquel's West Court. This all televised there. I think she's allowed the footage out there on YouTube and other places. He never makes a statement. He never gets on the stand. I believe he submitted a PSI, a pre-sentence investigation statement to her, but I don't believe that's public. It's not out there yet, so I'm not going to talk much about it. But still, not
Yeah.
really much of a explanation. And it didn't go over well for him. I never saw remorse, never apology to Tiffany. In
Yeah.
fact, in the court, as you'll see, they played jail calls during his sentencing to where he's speaking to someone and he's blaming Tiffany for the fact that he's there. If she would have just
Hmm.
told him about that other man, blaming a daughter, the 15-year-old, this wouldn't have
Yeah.
happened. And talks
Yeah.
very ugly about her, talks down on her, and didn't take long for the judge to go, if I could give you more than the max you plead to, I would. You're definitely getting the max. And he got 40 years.
Yeah, I think this is a case right here that you guys really needed to find the body on this case. I mean, a no body case. We talked about it. You came up to me and you were asking me questions about this case, and I think that
Yeah.
was before you guys even found the body.
Before
I
he
think
found it,
you
yeah.
were, yeah. And so, very, a lot of people are saying this in the chats over here. That's very impressive, and I agree. And it's not cold justice helps. It helps
Yes.
kind of get things going, but I think that your sheer tenacity with your department and your investigators really is pretty evident and impressive. And that's why I think that this is a story that I'm glad you came on here and told us. And honestly, I'll tell you something, James. I think that this guy, after he sits in prison for a couple of years, he might be worthy of a visit just to see if he's willing to, after he's adjusted there, maybe he's willing to just tell the whole story to give some answers to the family, maybe. And then again, there's really not a good reason for what he did. So maybe
No,
that'd be a reason you
no.
wouldn't.
It's pure jealousy, and it's brought up on the show, and it's brought up in the court case where people can search it. Is that we believe the tipping point was basically that she was finally moving on. It's a sad case of what we
Yeah.
see with domestic violence everywhere. Uh, and there people have told us that she actually went on a trip with Ken Weatherford in late June, her new boyfriend, to Cancun, Cozumel area. However, Terry had given her some money to go to Cancun because she told him she was going with girlfriends. But we believe that he found out. There's a lot of evidence and, of course, statements from people that say Terry knew before that happened. But I just don't think Kim knew that he knew. I don't think Kim knew
Yeah.
that she was walking into a firestorm. I believe he played her. She didn't know that he was going to front her up about, I gave you $500 with your friends. You want that other guy. And I don't think she knew what she was walking into. He definitely baited her in there with the jewelry. Now, whether it was to commit cold-blooded murder that immediately or whether it escalated with his anger, we don't know yet because only Kim and Terry know, and Terry's not talking right now. But I believe she thought this was like every other interaction with him.
Hmm.
She'd go get what he wanted. She'd calm him down. And she'd move on, so he wouldn't interfere. I believe wouldn't interfere with her night with Ken and Tiffany. If I go and pacify him and get this jewelry, he won't stop me. Maybe he won't show up at the dinner place or come by the house tonight while we're having a good time with my daughter and my boyfriend. And she had no idea what she was going into, but she told us from the start where she was. She told her daughter. I think that's a big thing we keyed on, is that these people sometimes tell us, we're seeing this as we go. They tell us what happened to them. And if she wouldn't have called Tiffany and said, hey, I got to make a stop, but she had a great relationship with her daughter. They talked all the time, and she
Yeah.
didn't keep things from her. And because if not that, it would be hard to put that she was there at 5:10 or 5:30. So Tiffany McGinnis, her daughter was able to say, no, my mom said she went to Terry's, and she was able to call Terry and kind of put
Hmm.
him on the spot where he couldn't deny that she came over,
Yeah.
because he may have denied she never showed up at all. So without Tiffany knowing that, Ken didn't know, no one would have known but him. So
Yeah.
that was a big
Yeah.
key to it.
It is a big key. I'll tell you what, if somebody has any information in reference to one of those other cold cases in the Beaumont, Texas area, do you guys have a dedicated cold case line, or is it
No, we
just they can
don't. It's
reach out to
just, man, we go through our main dispatch, but of course, 832-123 tips. Crime Stoppers is where we're getting a bunch of this. We've just actually closed a cold case from 2021 this year, a few months ago, that we didn't even know was a homicide. It was ruled in 2021 as a possible accidental overdose. And we got a tip that led us to a suspect that admitted to killing this woman and gotten away with it. And we started rolling with that. It was just a random Crime Stoppers tip. We found the
Mhm.
history of the guy, turned out he's a serial rapist and had just been committing more rapes recently that we put him in jail for. And two new investigators I have here just were tenacious at that guy with no evidence,
Nice.
and they got a confession, and now he's booked for murder. So, and that comes from somebody saying something, and
Yeah.
it's sad that we don't have a dedicated squad. What I try to do with my team here is when we get something like this and we have time to look at it, we don't waste our downtime. And
Yeah.
this is a homicide investigator, you have to pay attention to the fresh ones first because you don't want them cold. So the problem is there's not a lot of free time for us. But solving the Langwell case, and the year before that, we solved another notorious 1991 case, the murder of Mary Catherine Edwards through genetic genealogy. So
Mhm.
having these two happen has kind of spread things going to where the guys
Yeah.
in my unit, I each give them a case as I come across them, either on my
Mhm.
own or from, like you said, Crime Stoppers tips, family member, and we work them as hard as we can when we have the time to have them. And the 21 case, and then actually made an arrest this year, early in January, on a 2013 homicide. Same thing. Someone finally said something, and we were able to corroborate the
Mhm.
work and re-interview everybody from the start and made an arrest on that case. So, since the Langwell case, made two other arrests in them, but we do what we can. I'm looking
Yeah.
for other ideas. In fact, I've seen just great things happening all over the country. People are thinking outside the box. I'll give a little
Yeah.
shout out to the University of Texas Arlington and
Yeah.
Texas Arlington PD. They partner together, and they're allowing a senior level criminal justice case to look at their cold cases and basically do what cold justice did for us. These students in this class are organizing their files, creating a timeline. And there's an article out there that I read. I actually talked to the lieutenant over there, Blake Ritchie, who was a part of this program. They solved the notorious 1991 cold case based on this lead they got from college students that had the time, and they were able to make the case through DNA. And that was one that was on their books for a long time, and it's just a huge
Yeah.
win. So I'm always looking for new ideas. We're
Yeah.
think outside the box here, and
Right on.
yeah,
I love it, man. I love it. And I'll tell you right now, your department, you got some good people there because evidently, I mean, you just don't get people that are willing to talk to the cops unless you're treating people right and you're being professional and you're doing your job. So there's a
yeah,
lot
I'm
to be
very proud
said
of the
with
guys. They
respect to
do all
that.
the hard work. They make me look good. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
appreciate the hard work, teamwork. you know that I've seen your show, is I think some of these departments and maybe some of the problems we see with these cold cases is some detectives have worked in silos. Teamwork's not a big deal. It's kind of
Yeah.
possessive of a case, but
Mhm.
and they work good together. They work good with the other units. They work good with special crimes as a
Yeah.
21 case. And I'm just really proud of them. They make me look good.
That's
I'm not the one out here talking, but I may just sit and do payroll at my desk, and I have
yeah.
ideas. They're the ones out there making the plays. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, James, for sharing this story. I appreciate you being on. Thank you, Teresa and Amanda and all those other people that are sitting there going, great job to us. Really. And thank you to us. Really, thank you to you for being here. And I appreciate you all being here, from Georgia to Karen to everybody that's chimed in here and joined us for the evening. It means the world. The show is not a show without you guys joining us, and it would be no fun. I got to say thanks again to Phyllis for you know what, I've been doing this show for 2 years, and I haven't made a single cent. So thank you for doing that. That's very nice of you, and I will dedicate that to something that to make this show a little better, honestly. So I do appreciate it, and thank you so much. Great story tonight, James. I look forward to seeing you in San Antonio.
March.
And
yeah, we're presenting the case, and we'll build more details and photos for law enforcement. So
Great.
any Texas cops or Oklahoma cops, man, come see it. We'll show you all the behind the scenes stuff for sure.
That's right. I will see you there. We will hang out, and we will talk more about this for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for everybody for being here. For those of you that are tuning in tonight that are planning on seeing me February the 6th, remember the doors open at about 5 p.m. for meet and greet. We will start strictly at 6 p.m. and we will go to 8. You will be dazzled. You will be just blown away and educated too. You're gonna be smarter than you were when you walked in the door. I can promise you that. Also, I wanted to give a little bit of a shout out. If you're up in the Owasso, Oklahoma area, then check out Fulfilled Coffee Labs. It's in Owasso, and my nephew runs that place. He owns it. He's running it. Good coffee. I just got some of it, and I told him I'd give him a shout out. And I don't know if you like Cajun spice or not, James, but have you ever heard of Tony Satchery's, that Cajun spice? Heck yeah.
Well, I live in Beaumont,
yeah,
Texas. We live on Tony Satchery's down here. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Guess what? Doug Satchery, the grandson of Tony, has been in here watching you all night. So go get yourself some Tony Satchery's. Get you some, because it makes everything taste better.
I got plenty in the cupboard right now. So
good.
We'll probably make some gumbo this week. It's gonna get really cold in Beaumont, Texas, like 40 degrees.
Yeah.
Is as cold as it gets
nice.
down here. So.
Yeah, Doug's made me some Cajun gumbo for the first time I'd ever had it in my life, and it was epic. So, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, there he is right there. Thanks a lot for being here, Doug. I appreciate you, buddy. Ladies and gentlemen, next week, like I said, I'm going to be on stage. Remember to follow me on Instagram. No, go ahead and throw that up there. Remember to follow me on Instagram. You can click a picture of that QR code, and you can follow me there. You can also follow me on TikTok. Man, I don't know if you've got TikTok or not, James, but let me tell you something. It's a whole nother group of people, but it's fun. Yeah. So you like and subscribe this channel. Listen, I look at I look at the algorithm. I look at all the stuff, whatever I'm supposed to, the stuff, the data. And it says that about 70 or 80% of the people that watch this show do not hit subscribe. Just hit subscribe. It's very easy, and it's free, and it basically alerts you to when I have these episodes. And I won't keep him any longer. Don't click off just yet, James. And awesome. I will probably do a pre-record next week. I've got the guy I was supposed to have on here is he's still going to be on here, but a prosecutor from Boise, Idaho. So we're going to talk about stuff from Boise. He's also an author of a book, and I'll probably do a pre-record for those of you that can't see me on stage, but catch us next week, Friday. And until then, take us out, Amanda.